video for Class 3 in your Blender training with the BAP program. So today we're going to talk about the actual formation and shaping of sculpts now that we've covered the interfaces a bit. What we want to take and do is we want to start out with the cylinder, which is in your second layer. This can be reached by clicking down here in the menu bar on the second layer where the layer icons are indicated, or by pressing 2 on your number pad above your letters. We're going to go ahead and look at some of these sculpts that we have. I'm just going to press G and grab these over. You're going to notice that they're all a little bit different, and I'm going to be explaining the difference between these and what these mean for you. Right, now I'm going to select these. I'm going to do Control J. Now Control J, of course, is join, so it makes all these one object, and you wouldn't usually ever do this with sculpts, but I'm doing this to illustrate the difference in vertices. You'll notice that there's a different level of detail with each of these. This is important because the way they bend, of course, if you have something that's lower detail, more of the object's surface space will bend. Now you notice that it also moves the vertices right next to it as well, whereas one of these has more vertices, so less surface area is going because it's the connecting two. So one thing you can't see is this right here, because the way that the file is set up. So you want to click and make sure that this is down for your use a 3D manipulator widget for control transformation. This will allow you to see which way you're editing your stuff. If you're editing on the Z-axis or the Y-axis or the X-axis. Right. So now that you see that there's different vertice types and you understand that the more of these in here, the more detail you can get, and the less of these, of course, the more smooth it will become without much modification. Let's go ahead and start doing the shaping itself. Now I'm going to start with this one right here, the simpler one, because what I want to take and do is teach you how to make some basic shapes. I'm going to go ahead and move all this out of the way for you. Now when we look at the cylinder, of course a cylinder is a cylinder, but we notice that it has an open end. This is important for us to understand because this in actuality for a sculpt would be a closed end. What you want to take and do is close the loop. When you close the loop, you'll do this by pressing B, which gives you the bounding box as illustrated. Drag it across your top. Press S. Think about which axis you need to shrink it by. Now for this it's not so important because you can press S for scale and go 0. Notice that it went ahead and closed the loop there. We will do the same for the bottom, and we'll press 0. Now we want it to remain fairly symmetric, so we're going to do everything the same each time except for each side. Now you notice that this also moved these vertices here. What we want to occur is we want a flat side on this bottom. So we'll select all these right here with the bounding box. We'll press S for scale, Z because we want it to move along the Z-axis for the line that just appeared as blue. Then we'll press 0. Now you notice that we do it for the top and you have a nice flat surface. Now your edges are rounder because you selected a lower detailed cylinder, so what happens here is, of course, you get a nice smoothing effect if that's important to you. If you wanted it sharper, you would select a higher detail cylinder and you would push the vertices closer together, which gives it a hardened edge. For organic objects, you will want the most rounding as possible while still maintaining your shape. You have a lot more indents, concaves, convexes. For mechanical objects, you want more hard lines. Otherwise, you're going to look like you're driving a marshmallow if you're trying to design a car. Now from here we have a couple of options. We want to make a few shapes, and we're doing it with the simple one first just to illustrate points quicker because it's easier to get the overall basic shape. We're not really trying to go for anything detailed. So I'm going to tab, because tab of course goes into object and edit mode, but I want to go back into object mode, which I forgot to tell you. I'm going to push G, and I'm going to move it by the x-axis. Now you notice that for whatever reason it is gone again. There we go. I think I accidentally had some other stuff selected. That's probably why we couldn't see it. Now we have our cylinder. Let's go ahead and make a box. We can make a box easily by selecting the corners, then doing Shift-Z. Shift-Z will go ahead and edit your scaling in every direction but Z. Shift is when scaling is as to exclude a direction. So if we move it like this, we then develop a box here. Now you notice that is marshmallowy. If we want to make it less marshmallowy, less marshmallowy, we'd of course expand the vertices towards the edges as you're seeing here. So keep that in mind if that's something important to you. But we're going to go with soft shapes. So now we have a cube, we have a cylinder. Let's go ahead and get us a pyramid. So this is the same concept. One thing I like to do when I'm dealing with things like this, and I'm not sure what the angle of an actual true pyramid is, but let's just say it's something like so. I'm going to go ahead and scale this out. I'm going to rotate it by 35, and I'm going to just place it down on this edge right down here, and this right onto the center. So we've got this. I'm going to move this over, and it acts as a straight edge, like if you were drawing with a pencil on a piece of paper. And of course I rotated that using the R, and then I pressed 180, giving a 180 rotation, or flipping it around 180 degrees. Now what we have here is we have our edge, we have our object and our vertices. We're just going to start scaling these by by S and then X, because we're scaling it by X, or the X plane. And then we're just going to start moving this in until on the very top we give ourselves a fine point. So we want to make sure that we get an SX of 0. Now you may have to adjust because the vertices are of course affecting other vertices. You want this as straight as possible. And voila! You have a pyramid shape here, but it's a straight pyramid. So you want to take and go into your top view, or your top ortho, by pressing 7, rotate by 90, and repeat the process. You'll get faster as you do this. It may take you several minutes the first time out, and then also if you're smart about it, you'll go ahead and design some of these shapes in advance, save them to a file, and then leave them for later use. It's one thing I do when I know that I'm going to be using a shape over and over again in my builds. But I usually always start with the cylinder, so that's kind of my favorite shape. You may have a different one that you like. We'll be covering them all and their uses. So we've gone here from a cylinder to a box to a pyramid. Now you can do the same thing and keep it cylindric, yeah, good thing I can talk, right? And you could do the scale Or you can make it like a dome right here, and then just whatever you want to do. And you'll notice that because I'm not pressing S or X or whatever, I can make a needle to a spaceship or something. And it's all just by scaling these little things, right? And it's not complicated at all. A lot of people say, well, Blender's so hard. It's so difficult. I don't understand how to do it. You know, it's really not. When you get the hang of it, things become much easier. Now, there are complex things which require multiple shapes and some lining up to achieve. But as you get more in depth and more used to it, then it becomes easier. Now we're going to make a circle. So what we're going to take and do here is we're going to select these. We're going to unflatten these. We're just going to select both, and we're going to do S, Z, bring these out like here. I'm going to go ahead and shrink this down just by pressing our scale. We're not shifting or doing S or X or anything. Actually, we should do sorry about that. We'll want to take and do Shift Z, because we don't want it moving by the Z-axis. This makes it harder to deal with, and we don't want any overlap. So now, as you can see, I'm just shaping these things. Yep, starting to get more of a circular ball shape. We just keep fidgeting with it. There is a ball shape already, but if you prefer to do it like this and everything for whatever reason, maybe for texturing purposes, then please feel free to do so. This is just showing you how you can achieve basically all shapes, starting with the cylinder. Cylinder being, to me, the most important shape of all. And of course, this isn't like the best cylinder. This isn't going to be like a world prize ball or something. Circle. Just play it flawed, but you get the idea, and there we are. So we have all the basic shapes right here that you'd find in art when you're sketching, and then we can start combining these together. And that's how you begin. You begin with basic shapes, just like you would prims in Second Life. And once you start getting these developed, these basic shapes, then you can start assembling them like you would prims. Eventually your parts will become more complex, and your assemblies will become more complex as you build over time to enhance greater detail. Mesh behaves a lot differently than this. It has some of the same concept, but you wouldn't necessarily use these in the same practice. So Sculpts is a little bit more difficult, to be honest. Aside from texturing, it's a little bit easier. But other than that, that concludes the first video. So go ahead and start making your shapes, and be prepared for the next video, which I hope to release sometime this weekend, covering the next topic with shapes, and then we'll start getting into assemblies. Alright, thank you.